Scrappers, it's Tom from the iScrap app, and wherever you're watching us this week, we welcome you to our weekly report, where you can learn about scrap metal prices, news, ask us questions about materials, or ask our advice on the markets. If you're looking to ask those questions, ask us whether it's live or after, and we'll always get you those answers. Come on in, let's go talk scrap.
Script, scrap, scrappity-doo. Welcome to 2022. That rhymed. That was a complete accidental thing, but I'm happy that it worked out. I hope that everyone had a very merry Christmas, a happy New Year, whatever it is that you celebrated. I hope that it was happy or merry or whatever it is that you celebrated. Even if it was time off, I hope that you had a nice time. We've seen some really nice movement in the scrap markets going right from December into January. So, some of the trends that we've talked about kind of are getting bucked a little bit, but we're going to talk about those things. A couple things that you want to be able to think about is what you're doing with your metals. Are you holding them? Are you selling them? Every single week, we try to give you an idea of what's going on in the markets, but we're also trying to make it a little easier to get quick headlines to learn about what's going on. Sell steel, sell copper, hold this, hold that. So by learning about what's going on in the markets overall, it's a great thing. But if you don't have time, we have quick daily updates that you can get through app notifications by downloading the iScrap app for your iPhone or your Droid. You can always go online. You can subscribe to our emails. We're trying to give you information. So if we can give it to you quicker, let us know so we can adjust that. We have a few questions from last couple of weeks that we wanted to talk about. We know that we had some really nice reactions to our 2022 outlooks for the market. We're happy to see such positive reactions. We're going to really monitor those, maybe even do quarterly ones. We're going to see how things go over the next couple of months and kind of move on from there. But let's talk about some things that we had over the last 2 weeks and give you some answers.
One of the first questions was, why is some scrap made into blocks and some are shredded into small chips?
Awesome question. So this came out of a YouTube comment, and it's really something that you might not think about. So I'll try to explain it. Certain steel mills will accept the blocks of steel. So those blocks are made through logging machines at scrap yards, essentially large horizontal balers. They dump everything in, they make it into a cube, and it's easier for them to ship cubes of steel instead of loose material in dump trailers. Maybe they're in a tougher area because it's just harder to move material. So not having a tarp on top of an open top trailer will make it safer. Some manufacturers or scrap yards are selling to end users that like those blocks. They throw them in the furnace. They stay more compact. It makes it easier for them to use them. Some scrap yards don't have space, so they need to make them into cubes. Other scrap yards shred material. So while it might be, smaller pieces, that could be shred. And what those scrap yards could be doing is shredding all of these different pieces of steel that come in. And they might have non-ferrous separators that are pulling out the copper, the aluminums, the high temperature alloys. If they pull those out, they can sell that at a higher profit. They'll be able to sell the steel as a shred, and it'll go a little easier to different mills. Different mills like different products. Some mills like heavy grade unprepared. Some mills like light iron or shred. So those scrap yards could be selling to different places with different demands. Also, the shredders are pulling the fluff out, the Zorba, the different, if it was a car, for instance, the seat covers, the cloth, the leather, the insulation from the doors, the roof, from the seats that you're sitting in. So they could be pulling all of these things out to make a cleaner product. And that's one of the differences between the blocks and the shred. Another question.
Would it be worth stripping the Bear Bright from Romex wire?
Yeah, so, it all depends. And this question was actually expanded a little further. And it was, should I buy a wire stripper to strip the Romex? And the answer is up to you, but I'll tell you this. If you buy a good tool that makes you money, maybe it doesn't pay itself off in the first year, but a lot of investors invest in things, whether it's a house, an investment property, an equipment, and that equipment takes 5 to 13 years, large range, depending on what you're doing, to be able to have the asset pay itself off and then start to generate or return money to the investor or whoever bought it. So if you spend $400 on a wire stripper, maybe you're not going to make $400 this year, but if you plan on stripping wire over the next 3, 4, 5 years, maybe after year 2, it pays itself off. So you have upfront costs. That's what businesses do, whether they're buying trucks, buildings, equipment. Upfront costs, they amortize it or they use it, and while they're using it, that's when it pays itself off. So it's really up to you. But if you're going to get a lot of material, it gives you the ability to make more money, especially if you're taking care of it really well. I wouldn't worry about it. I always like investing in equipment. Another question.
We had a question about the demand for aluminum and copper according to solar projects that might be happening.
Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting one to think about. And this comment that came through YouTube was interesting for a couple of reasons. One, it just illustrated that aluminum can be substituted for copper. That's not really surprising. Many of our homes or apartments or condos actually have aluminum cable running to them opposed to copper cable. Maybe not throughout the house, but running from the power lines to the house or the junction boxes, the circuit breakers. Those are a lot of aluminum lines. But the problem is you need larger pieces of aluminum to run the same amount of current through, because copper is so much better at conducting and transferring power that if you go to aluminum, it takes a larger gauge. So as solar projects really take off, as more electric vehicles take off, as more installation of the EV charging stations take off, as more metals are needed for this new super cycle, aluminum will continue to be utilized, but sometimes you can't retrofit copper with aluminum, maybe because the conduit isn't big enough and code doesn't persist. So then you have to go to copper. But in new installation projects, they're generally using larger PVC or aluminum conduits to run these lines through, which is going to create more demand for either the plastics or the aluminum for the conduit. In the same breath, you're going to have an increased demand for the commodities that go into the solar panels, the batteries, all of the different wiring that runs between things. This isn't going to slow down. And I'm going to kind of end with this question and go into our market report here. We're entering a new series of super cycles. In the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, oil really drove the market because that was the only way to really move things. You might have seen a little bit of solar panels out there, but the electrification of cars and the green movement of really eliminating coal and heavy pollutants into the economy, into the world, not the economy, into the environment and into the world, they started to shift in that 1990s to 2005 time period. Since that happened, we're slowly but surely seeing the development of a new super cycle based on commodities, based on metal commodities, not on oil or gas. So going into the next few years, as the electrification keeps up, we're going to see a further demand for metals, and we do not expect to see these metal prices hitting major floors outside of another craziness like March of 2020, but those are outside world events that affect everything and are isolated incidents, just like the housing crisis in 2008, the financial tech collapse in 1999. These are isolated events that you can pin big market tanks on, so you can't factor those in. But if we're looking at day-to-day, month-to-month, quarter-to-quarter, year-to-year market movement from 2022 and beyond, this new super cycle of electrifying the world and getting away from fuel and fossil fuels, going towards the renewable energies, wind, solar, etc., you're going to see a change where the metal prices are here to stay. don't take my word as stone, but we're not going to see large swings like we have in the past. We see more people at home. I saw Walmart looking to hire 3,000 drivers for their home delivery service. Well, what does that mean for the metal industry? That's 3,000 additional vehicles added into their fleet, which I don't know. I didn't research deep into it, but I would bet that they're going to be electric. That means more commodities are going to be needed there. As Amazon and other large retailers expand their own fleets, they need more metals. They need more commodities. This is going to continue for the next few years and really into the future, where we're going to have a very strong commodity wave moving forward. And that commodity wave is going to really catapult metal prices, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Now, month over month, we still haven't changed our opinion on steel. We think that you should be holding your heavier grades while selling your light iron or your shred grades. With the market a little depressed from where it was 4 or 5 weeks ago, it's easier to move those lighter grade and cheaper items quicker than it is to hold them for longer. But the heavier items, cast iron, P&S, unprepared number ones, those might be items that if you have the ability to save them or a trailer to put them on, you put them there. You also might want to work with some of your local scrap yards. They might have lugger boxes that they can come to your location if you produce enough material or store enough material. You could even pay them for an hour's time, live load dumpsters, and it creates less work for you, makes you more money overall, and that's going to be something that helps you in the long term. If you work at large companies and they produce large amount of scraps that you are not able to get your hands on, never fear, contact us here at the iScrap Map. Let us know what type of leads you have out there so our team can start working on them. And if we ever land any of those projects or job opportunities, we'll always make sure to loop you in as well. Now, going into other things that you should hold, sell. Catalytic converters, sell them. What a crazy increase. Rhodium up, platinum up, palladium up. Why? Well, a lot of the chip shortages are starting to get themselves ironed out, which is exactly what we expected for the last 6 months. It's just starting to happen now. The holidays are gone. Auto manufacturers are finally adjusting to both labor problems that are getting fixed, chip shortages, which are being fulfilled. These are leading to more autos going onto the road. More autos going onto the road means that there's still a lot of gas engines and diesel engines. They're not just disappearing overnight, even though, companies like Chevrolet introduced an electric Silverado today, right? They're going that way, but they're not going to be there for a while. So the precious metals and the catalytic converters, not only are there going to be a continued demand for them, as we try to increase fuel consumption and miles per gallon, decrease fuel consumption, increase miles per gallon, decrease pollutants going into the environment, the catalytic converter precious metals are going to be more compact in many of these newer vehicles because they want to eliminate so many emissions, keep the environment cleaner. So we do expect going into the first quarter of this year, a nice increase in the catalytic converter markets. You can always get your quotes and your prices through rrcats.com, providing free shipping to almost every single customer that qualifies. So with $90 of value or more, rrcats.com is paying for those shipping rates. So it certainly gives us the opportunity to work with you in a cleaner and more efficient way. Now, overall, these markets, very strong. Copper prices really 10, 12 cents up over the last week and a half. That wasn't expected, but it was very welcome. So I think that these copper prices, if you're holding for any reason, sell. There's no reason to hold right now. You got really high markets. Sell while they're high. Even if they're going higher, sell. Take that money to help you either pay off debt, save the money, invest in new equipment, put it in your pocket. There's no reason to just save things right now. These markets are too strong. One thing that you might want to work on, learn about aluminum. We've had a lot of people talking about aluminum extrusions, and my yard doesn't pay correctly. And we've wrote about this. We've sent videos about this. Aluminum extrusions aren't a grade of aluminum. It's like saying I drive a car. What kind of car do you have? So with your different extrusions, talk to your scrap yards. How do they buy them? How do they separate them? How can you separate them to make their lives easier? Do they even know what you're talking about? I've talked to scrappers that have gone to scrap yards, and they don't even know about different grades of aluminum, 6061, 6063. If you're going to the wrong yard, it's time to stop going to the wrong yard. Use the iScrap app to find other yards in your area and learn about prices. And while you're on there, post some prices yourself. It gives you the ability to learn about markets, make more money for yourself, and learn what to do moving forward. Now, here we are, January 5th, 2022. Markets are strong. Markets are steady. I believe that it's time to sell many materials that you're holding. If you have questions on different prices, if you want to post prices online, it's free to do. If you're looking for additional information week to week, become a Patreon supporter. We have different tips and tricks and news feeds that go out to only our Patreon supporters. And of course, check us out on all of our social channels. Scrappers, this is Tom. You know I'm going to scrap you later, but I want to thank you for tuning in. Give me your ideas. Give me your big leads. And until next week, I'll scrap you later.
Thanks for checking out our scrap videos. By becoming a Patreon supporter today, you'll be entered into monthly giveaways for tools and other products to help you make more money with your scrap.